Hello, I'm Jason Lightoller from Woodside. Today I'm going to show you how to use the Knits That Fit app in order to create a custom pattern for use on the knitting machine. Before you begin, you need to ensure that you have installed the correct version. As you can see on the screen here, this is the premium version, which currently stands in the autumn of 2025 at £14.99. But that's just a one-off fee. You don't have any recurring fees with this app. You pay that once and then you'll be able to use it for a lifetime. So once you've opened up the app, you hit Create New Pattern, and then you'll be in this screen here. Now you need to select the units for measurements that you want to use. Now I'm quite happy to work in either metric or imperial. It really doesn't bother me, but you can choose whichever one you want to. And as you can see here, the measurements will go in either centimeters or inches. And you will then save your preferences there accordingly. And then you hit the back button at the top to return to the screen. And for the needle size system, because we're using this for the knitting machine, we would ignore that. So you need to give this pattern a name. Now I'm going to be making a denim style jacket, so I'm just going to call this denim jacket. And I'll put that in there. And then we're going to choose here the knitting method. So what we do is we're going to select machine knit flat, and then we'll scroll down and we will choose the age group and the gender. So you have a selection here, and obviously this is going to be for me, and there's only going to be one option there, which is for men. And the garment, so this is where you would choose your garment style. And I want this to be a jacket, as I've said, so I'm going to select a cardigan style jacket because it's going to be a button-up jacket, so that's what I'm going to select there. And the desired fit. Now I want this a fairly loose fitting garment, so what I'm going to do is select the middle one, and it automatically puts in garment ease, and that gives a 4-inch measurement there. Now the front neck shape you can choose. You've got a various amount of selections there. So you've got crew, you can choose V-neck, boat neck, funnel neck, whichever one you want to. I'm going to choose a medium neck. Now, as people who've watched my videos, I tend to almost always use cut and sew. So this doesn't particularly make any difference if you use a cut and sew for your neck. So, but for the purpose of this, I'm going to choose a round neck medium. Now, the sleeve type, we're going to hit that there, and you can choose whichever one you want to, of course, and it's defaulted to long, so I'm going to hit that because you can't actually go back there unless you've actually hit long. And now you choose your armhole style. And what I want is a drop shoulder for this. You can either have a set-in, you can have a raglan or a drop shoulder. So here it's now gone down to the type of yarn that we're using, and I'm going to be using double knit. So I'm just going to enter DK for an abbreviation. And now we need to select the tension on the knitting machine. And I did my swatch at tension 4. And the main stitch pattern was stocking stitch. And you can choose whichever one out of those that you want. So now it's asking about your gauge. Now, obviously for any knitting, for most garments, you need to make a swatch. That is not negotiable. So I made my swatch and I washed and dried it in accordance with the yarn instructions. And I came up with a tension swatch of 19.5 stitches. So I'm just going to scroll down. And the rows was 31 rows. And there we are. And now it's asking for an edging stitch. So I'm going to be using a mock rib. So what I'm going to be putting there is a single rib. And what it will do, it will generate the pattern as if you're using a ribber. Now I'm going to be using a mid-gauge machine to make this particular garment, which doesn't have a ribber. So I'm just going to be doubling the amount of rows. So now we scroll down. So this is the custom stitch panel options. And this is optional, you don't have to do that. I'm going to ignore that because I don't often use this part of the pattern itself at all. So now we're going to put in the clothing size. I'm going to select here because it's asking you to choose from the size. and I'm going to put in the size that I want, which is a 44 inch. Remember that I've chosen the loose fitting. And what it's done, it's put these measurements in here. Now you need to very carefully check these because it's done to a standard measurement here. And I often find that with this particular app, the neck is slightly too wide. So I'm going to reduce this and I'm going to actually put in a neck width of 8 inches. Now it only gives you half the neck width. So when I'm talking about a neck width of 8 inches, that's the front neck and the back neck. But as I said, I usually in the main do cut and sew. So again with this, it's given me a standard rib length of 1.6 inches. I want just a little bit deeper than that, so I'm going to increase that to 2 inches. The sleeve length for me is normally fine, and the cuff length I want to match the rib length, so I'm going to put that at 2 inches as well. And the cuff size is just a little bit too big for me, so I'm going to reduce that down and I'm going to put that at 9.75, 9 3/4. We're just going to double check these chest measurements and the body measurements and everything else. That is usually always fine for me on this particular app. Now this additional measurements here, body at full length not required, I always hit that, and what it's actually asking you is if you want the garment to be tapered in at the waist or not. If you actually don't click that, it will taper the waist measurement. So most of the time the garments that I make are actually not tapered and it's the same width all the way down from the chest. So I'm going to hit chest measurement, and if you want to make any other pattern notes there, then you can do. And as you can see, it's actually kept the full length of the garment the same measurement as the chest. And you can go up and double check all of these measurements to make sure that everything is correct. And yes, it is. And all you do is click save and it's generated the pattern there. So what it's done, it's given you a summary of the pattern here. This is what we've created, and any abbreviations in the pattern is here, and this is what you've asked it to create, and these are the pattern instructions here. And then if you keep scrolling down, it will tell you how much yarn approximately you will need, and this is where you start your pattern. So it's saying to me that with the tension set to 2, I need to put the row counter on 0 and bring out 120 needles to holding position and start working on the rib. Now, of course, if you don't want to start on with an E-wrap, as it's suggesting I do here, you can start on with waste yarn or whatever method you want to use. And then I need to knit to row counter 16 and then set the tension to 4, reset the row counter to 0 and knit up to row 124. Then it's telling me how to shape the back, neck and shoulders and so on and so forth until you get down here, which is telling you how to shape the right front neck and the shoulders. And that's essentially it. Now, you also have a schematic here. If you just click up there, and obviously that's so tiny, you need to enlarge it on the screen like that. And if you want to put it into a charting device, you can just copy these particular diagrams here, and then you'd be able to put that in your charting device. And that is your neckline there, and that's 1/2 of the jacket front. And then all you do is just click back, and then you don't have to use the pattern straight away. In order to go back to it, you just click pattern list, and then these are the previous ones I have done, and then this is the last one, which is the denim jacket. And there we are. That's the pattern that we've just created. If you want to go back and change something, you just click settings, and then if you want to readjust some of the measurements, of course, you can just hit into one of those and then you click save at the top of the screen there. I find this pattern generator in the main very accurate, providing your swatch is accurate. I use this fairly frequently in conjunction with printed patterns, and sometimes, now I find this in the main fairly accurate. If you can't get gauge from a designer's pattern, then this is the next best thing, because you don't need to match a designer's gauge. You just put in the gauge that feels right for the yarn that you're using, and the generator will do everything else. And sometimes it's just so much easier to work with your own gauge than trying to match the designer's gauge that you can be forever and a day trying to match, or using conversion factors to convert a pattern.